So we are moving to our next session. I welcome Professor Pravat Ranjan, Vice Chancellor,
Thank
DY
you.
Patil International University. Welcome, Pravat sir. Thank you for giving your precious time to 18th World Education Summit.
Thank you.
And I welcome Dr. Ketan Kocha, Director, Symbiosis Institute of Technology. Welcome, Ketan sir. Welcome for giving your time. And Professor Dr. Kunchera P. Isaac, Director General Zimli Group of Institutions from Bangalore. Welcome, Isaac sir. Welcome very much. And we have Professor Parvinder Singh is also joining within minutes. So till then, we will start this session, and this is the last panel of this session, the showstopper of the day one. And we have the esteemed panelists from the PEN India. So I request all my audience, we are going to discuss on the topic perspective, reforms and initiatives required for internalization of Indian universities. So this is the most important topic right now we are discussing regarding the internationalizations of the Indian universities. Much more topic has to be discussed and we will deliberate from these stakeholders. So till then, Dr. Parvinder sir will join. We will start this session by taking the opening remarks from the each panelist for the maximum 3 to 4 minutes regarding what their views, how the future prospect is going to be in the higher education and what their remarks on this internalization of the Indian university. So I will start from Dr. Ketan sir. Ketan sir, your opening remarks regarding these topics and how you will cover the future and what the best practices should be followed.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon to my fellow panelists as well, and the Prapat Ranjan sir, whom I think know since several years. You see, this internationalization of the higher education I don't think it's a new phenomena. It has changed in 21st century, but the roots are there since Nalanda and Takshashila, where I'm sure a lot of students were traveling to India and Asia, for the higher education. But over a period of centuries, what has happened is the standards have been, I think, deteriorated. If I have not been too blunt, and the quality of the education is suffering right now. Also, the innovations and creativity which is required compared to some of the Western universities, that is also, I think, diminishing. And as per the lot of reports from the McKinsey and all, the employment youth, those who are employable rather, that percentage ideally should be 100%, right? But that is also not up to the mark. And this is, I think, one of the basic reasons where this particular phenomena of international education or combining or collaborating with the international universities would help, because the foremost advantage of that particular collaboration is to enhance the skill set, and it broadens the horizon of the youth while studying, and that is, I think, most important need of the day. Along with that, it also increases the cultural awareness, because that is a stepping stone for the global world which we are envisaging right now. And the third important aspects which also is possible because of that is awareness of the global issues. So what are the issues faced by global economy, or for example energy crisis or water pollution, or let's say global warming. So all this will be understood at the global level, and obviously it will be also solved jointly at the global level with the collaboration with universities and industry and academia and all. So this particular topic which has been chosen here is require systematic thinking, that how these global resources can be used to build capacity, increasing access, enhance quality, and encourage diversity as well. So I think that's a context on which I think we are going to rather discuss or deliberate or debate maybe. Right? So that's, I think, at nutshell I would like to present.
Thank you, Dr. Ketan, for this wonderful opening remarks. We will discuss how we deliberate and learn from the history. And coming to the Professor Prabhat sir, your opening remarks regarding this topic and how you see the future regarding this internationalization in the education in this digital era.
Thank you. First of all, hello to Dr. Ketan Kotecha and Dr. Isaac. We have known each other for a long time. So good to see you people again. What I would like to say that just like the industry, we were under license Raj for a long time until the economy was liberalized, where everything you needed an approval. Education also has been in some kind of a license Raj. Dr. Isaac was part of the system where for everything you needed the approval, and the regulatory bodies define the process for doing everything without taking the responsibility for the outcome. So we talk about today students not being employable, 85% students not being employable. Large number of institutions have the same regulatory stamp where we are defining the process, but we are not guaranteeing the outcome. If you go to industry, you define a process, you guarantee that the product that comes out meets certain quality requirements. So we need to move away from the process part. Let the process be defined by the institutions themselves rather than somebody else doing. We focus on the outcome part of that. That is going to be very important. We talk about this. We talk about outcome. Every government discussion, you will hear about outcome-oriented thing. But actually what we do is that we clamp by putting process in the place. That is wrong, something that we need to do it. If we don't provide quality education by innovation in the education system, we cannot expect to attract international students. Now, I'm not talking here of developing countries, Africa and so on, which is a large population interesting. We should be able to compete with anybody in the world. It does not matter which country he or she belongs to. That's the challenge. The second part, as Dr. Kotecha mentioned, was that we had an international education system. Nalanda University was an example where people used to come from all over the world to participate in the education system that we had. Nalanda was not isolated by itself. There were large number of such institutions. And just like we have coaching institutions today around Nalanda, there were villages which to prepare students for that. The people used to come from abroad, stay there in villages, and they used to participate in the education system, try to get admission into Nalanda. So somewhere down the line, we have become under the slave mentality, and we got into a system where somebody has to put a stamp. And the education institutes, by and large, they try to get an approval stamp. Okay. So we need to change away from that. The new education policy is the right step towards that. Unfortunately, I would have liked many of these to be implemented much faster than it's been diluted a little bit. 15 years is too long a time for any policy to be implemented because you have 3-4 governments would change by that time. So one government wants to do it, another government says that no, I'm not going to do it. That's the second part. The third part is that, as we have seen the Corona period, and Dr. Isaac was part of Technology Vision 2035 exercise, where we had seen the technology use growing, we had seen the role of teacher changing. All of this is part of our document. Corona has shown that. So today, technology has to be used in an effective manner. And I'm thankful to AICTE that 40% online education has been allowed now. But what they have done, they said that only use my platform. Why let it be open? Let it go anywhere. Any online platform the university likes should be available to us. So because today, for example, there was a class taken by a person who was in a space station for 1 year. He's teaching about a space. I cannot have teachers like him everywhere in the world. So why not let the best person in the world teach my students? And today, online education has grown tremendously. So we need to, again, let's not restrict it to say that online education, but only do it in this particular platform, whatever it is. The third and last point that I would like to make is that there's a big gap created between private institutions and government institutions. Everywhere see the same thing. Today, just now it is happening. In fact, one government body comes out saying that we'll file patents at lower cost for government institution, but I'll not consider private institutions in that. Ministry of Education on the other side has formed a committee, a member of that, saying that please don't do this. So Ministry of Education is saying something else, Ministry of Commerce is saying something else. So this dichotomy of private versus government should go away. Few years back, when I looked at US top 20 engineering college, 19 are private engineering college, one my alma mater, Berkeley, was the only one listed. Today, do we talk about Stanford being a private institution or a government institution? It does not matter. They should all compete on merit. So on the one hand, we're trying to promote by putting in money, funds everywhere, preferences, and sometimes it's obvious, like in the system itself it is mentioned, and sometimes it is a bias that is there. I've been part of the government system, I've seen that. So that also needs to change. That's very important. So I'll stop at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Prabhat. And we will discuss further regarding this gap between the private and the government institutions and the barrier via policy and the regulations. So coming to the Professor Dr. Isaac, sir, your opening remarks regarding these topics and how you deliberate in the future prospects, sir.
Thank you, Abhishek, from Millets
Thank you, sir.
Media, for arranging this World Education Summit. I find a lot of co-hosts for this, including Coursera, a lot of universities. I mean, it's a great event. I think I'm happy to meet Professor Dr. Prabhat Ranjan, who is a close associate. I mean, we had a lot of opportunities to work together, a great man. So that's right. So yeah, I'm happy to meet Dr. Ketan of SIT and Dr. Ravinder Singh. I think he has just joined. So it's a good opportunity to interact. See, when we talk about internationalization, it happens in 3-4 ways. One is the cross-border supply of services. When you talk about the cross-border supply of services, the MOOC is one such platform, right? So Coursera, which is mostly has presence in India today, is mainly being, the content is developed in US university. And where is the Indian platform? Where are we able to provide the services across our borders? That's just a question which I would like to ask. I mean, where we stand? How do we make that happen so that the NPTEL or the other platforms cross the borders? The second one is the consumption abroad, where the consumer cross the border. It could happen that students go from India to other countries, or the students can come from other countries to India. So this is where we have the problem. See, normally the flow happens from the developing countries to the developed countries. So we have got to make things to happen. I mean, the education sector has to move faster, has to develop faster to compete with the developed countries to attract these consumers crossing the borders to India. So the best example could be that our IITs, which has got a better standing, can we attract more students from abroad? The leading institutions, the private institutions, Prabhat Ranjan has really put up a very big question. Like, there should not be any divide between the government and the private. It should all be judged based on one ranking criteria. And there should not be something to differentiate between the two. All are universities or educational institutions serving the population of India. And I mean, in the context of internationalization, we are trying to attract people. See, then the third point is the commercialization in another country, where we set up campuses outside the country. I mean, we have good examples of Dubai Academic City or the Dubai Knowledge Village, where some of our universities have already established their campus. And the fourth one is the presence of persons in another country by way of visiting faculty or faculty serving in the universities. That is happening. So we have got to really get into all these four things so that the real internationalization happens. Out of which, if you look at the new education policy, we allow it's encouraging that the first 100, the universities in the first 100 rankings are allowed to set up campuses in India. But I don't know how many of them will come to India. And if that to happen, our system of education has to develop. And probably we can also, as envisaged in the national education policy, that our art, culture, yoga, and other kind of things, we can attract students from abroad. But when I look at the problem, I can list three issues. The first issue, which I think already has been highlighted, are we really practicing a good quality education with an outcome-based education? So that we, I mean, with which is student-centric. If we can move from the present level to a real outcome-based education, with a student-centric one, then we can attract students from. I mean, our ranking will also go. The second point, which I find the problem, is the absence of research. The research in the national education policy also, now that the NRF is being created, but it's almost after, I mean, it's very slow. 1 year has passed. The last year budget also, there was an allocation for National Research Fund, but nothing has happened. So this is something which how fast we move will help to the internationalization. So absence of research and collaboration with industries is something which we have got to make it further to happen. Then can we attract, again, the fourth point which I was trying to tell is how to, the presence of persons in another country. How do we attract good professors from abroad? So these are challenges which we have got to solve, so that the study in India, even in the study in India, some scholarships are given to the neighboring SAARC and other countries, so that the students can come and learn in the Indian universities, which is 100% subsidized by the government of India. It's good move, so that will be a stepping stone to attract students from other developed countries to come and study in India, provided we improve our teaching learning practices and we reach to a real outcome-based education and research to happen. So this is what I see the whole problem of internationalization. I think I have summed up everything which I had in my mind. How can we improve it? It's not the opening remarks really. I just said the problem, but how to get into and solve it is something which this kind of conferences, debates, and discussions will really help in solving these issues. That we have got to get into the action mode to improve the whole scenario. So if you can get into that, I think things will improve. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ashok sir, and we will discuss how we came to in this action mode. Right now, we are only in the deliberation mode. How we came into action mode, we will discuss further. And coming to the Dr. Parvinder sir, your opening remarks regarding the topic, then we will proceed to the discussion regarding how we can proceed. Parvinder sir, can you put on your mic?
It's muted.
Hello. Your mic is still off.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Abhishek, for giving me this opportunity to interact with people of very great wisdom, Professor Prabhat, Dr. Ketan, and Professor Isaac. This is really a big challenge to the Indian education system. That's the internationalization of the higher education. We, at the moment, we all understand that no country in the world can remain isolated from the global developments in the knowledge, because knowledge is created and knowledge is delivered nationally, but it has to be shared globally. So interpretation of the internationalization of the education is a process when the product is nationally produced and it is transmitted to the people cross-border, as highlighted by Professor Parvat and Professor Isaac. The universities, they are conceived from the medieval period, and we feel proud that the international education, India was the pioneer when Takshila and Nalanda University they existed with 10,000 students. and more than 2,000 professors. And we all know that the people from China, Syria, and other countries, they used to come and they study the culture and the level of the education, which is really very amazing to all the educationists of our country, and we should feel proud that we have been in the lead. We never learned so far that the student will go to America or to UK, but rather the Takshila and Nalanda. We are proud of our educational heritage also. So the university which were there, now the newly independent countries post World War II. I read somewhere when the N. Verghese, the Vice Chancellor of National Institute of Planning, so he has commented in one of his very intelligent paper that the most visible form of the international education is the uh, cross-border education, which is taking place through the cooperation projects, academic exchange, scholarships, and many of them, they have been highlighted in his paper. It may be a Colombo Plan, British Council, Fulbright program, and DAD also. So they are already in existence. Now, what is required at the moment, the challenges which has come, that's, I can say, that's a battle for brains. That's the theoretical knowledge to design and technological knowledge to develop production and technical knowledge to produce and vocational skill to support. And now what is happening at the moment, the students from the developing countries, they are going to developed nations. And there are two models. Either the country should be competent enough to train the students for every discipline, or they have to hire the services, they have to hire the brains from the other country. So I think number two seems to be viable and feasible, and that is why they catch the young, and in other words, the battle of brain is promoted, that's promoting the globalization. And it is also really improving the diplomatic relations also. Education has become a medium. So like H-1B visa of the USA and the blue card of the European Union and the point-based immigration policies of UK, Australia, they are always a welcome step by the students. So what I mean is that a university should become a provider, educator, investor, and it should be customer friendly, that's the student friendly. Now, what are the challenges? As most of the challenges have been considered. So cross-border supply of service where consumers do not cross-border. So e-learning should be the internationally acceptable, and the government of India and our education system has rightly opened a chapter of the MOOCs, and we know that we are second to the USA in the MOOCs enrollment. Consumption abroad where the consumers cross the border and the study abroad are the most visible, so that should be visible. Commercial presence of provider in the another country, that seems to be very franchising. And even in the ambit of the NEP 2020, as we have trying to remove the word private, public, or the other universities, so we are opening our campuses for the overseas campuses. But as one of the speaker was rightly saying, that we need to come in the first 100 of the world ranking universities. We need to have the curriculum of the world level. We need to have the staff or the faculty. We need to have the infrastructure. And then I think that can be the biggest challenge. If I see the data of the UNESCO, 5.09 million students, they have crossed the national border in 2017, and which has really increased. So it's that USA has taken a lead, followed by the UK. And now the most important sending countries to the developed countries are China, India, Saudi Arabia, and Republic of Korea. And now what are the students who are coming to our countries? They are from Ghana, Kenya, Jordan, or South African countries. So where they find that the education, despite of the cheaper in India as compared to the expensive education in the European countries, still we need to catch the target to achieve the value which has been promoted to us. So these seems to be some government policies are required, good infrastructures are required, global universities are required, and the world-class faculty is required. If we can send the brain outside, we must retain our brain in our country. So that, Abhishek ji, seems to me the big challenge. So where we can deliberate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Parvinder sir, and we will discuss regarding these challenges. And coming to the discussion points, so Dr. Ketan sir, Parvinder sir has just raised the point regarding the brain drain. So Ketan sir, my question to you in the same context. So once a time, an interviewer has asked Bill Gates that why you are hiring so much Indians. So Bill Gates has answered that if we didn't hire Indians, such a brain of Indians, they will open new Microsoft in India. So such kind of brains we have, such kind of talent we have, such kind of talent is coming from our universities, our Indian universities. Most engineers, doctors, scientists are working all over India. So how we can stop this brain drain? And I don't think so that there is quality of education matter. There is something other thing is lacking right now, that is taking the brains out of the India, and we are talking about internationalization or education. So your Ketan sir, your remarks regarding this brain drain. Ketan sir, can you put on your mic?
Yeah, so it has to deal with definitely now with respect to administrative processes for sure, because I think directly, indirectly, Dr. Isaac and Dr. Prabhat also mentioned about the bifurcation between private and public universities. So that is affecting indirectly the quality of the education in our country for sure. That is one of the, I think, biggest reason. Second, I feel mushrooming of the institutions, because I think we want to increase the growth enrollment ratio and all. So the large number of institutions opened, they failed to provide quality education. That is also one of the reason where if you compare, and if you need a solution there, a solution is whatever we are discussing today is collaboration with international good universities, whereby if for example the curriculum we still feel, suppose in engineering, that a lot of engineering courses are to be taught. So this is a mindset problem where we want that only maybe out of 45 courses, minimum 40 courses of engineering should be taught. And once you go to Stanford, if you realize that there is no engineering course in first year, let's say, right? It starts from, it's an holistic curriculum. So we need to adopt that for sure, which is holistic curriculum. Now, because I think AICTE and UGC has mandated, the universities are framing that kind of curriculum, maybe borrowing the curriculum, but still the heart is missing. Suppose I want to teach critical thinking, I want to teach ethics, but who will teach to the engineers, how it is to be taught? There are a lot of lacunas there. Second, I think there is a lacuna of teaching learning methodologies. I feel there should be a top-down approach of teaching, whereby we start with a big problem and application, and then boil down to theory, whatever is required to solve that particular problem. I have seen opposite in many of the institutions, where a lot of theories have been taught on the name of that basic fundamentals must be stronger, and finally application comes at last. And by the time 21st centuries, students are different, their engagement or attention span is extremely limited, so they lose that context. Now ideally, I feel if you are teaching an robotics course, robot should be there in the class on the first lecture, not on the last lecture. So that's definitely a problem, and because of that, the attention span we have never been able to capture. So application-oriented top-down approach of teaching learning is important, but at the same time, the third and most important factor which is missing is our assessment system. We still feel that 3 hours examination, a written summative examination is an option, but that is to be totally wiped off, I feel. It should not be based on some discussion which happens in academic council. It should be teacher driven. If I am a teacher of English communication, what is the use of writing a 3 hours paper? I can communicate with the students, and that is my examination. If I am teaching something IoT related courses, Internet of Things, some students do the hands of good particular projects. That is my evolution. What is the use of 3 hours written examination there? And we always try to promote skill-based education. But our examination systems lacks and skill, right? Also, I never understand that why there should be one student and one examination. We want that students should be in isolation while performing examination. And once the student comes out from the institution, we want that he should work in a team in the industry. So it's exactly reverse we are trying to teach. Why there cannot be an examination which is performed in a team, which industry demands. You see, we want them to be in isolation, and once the student comes out and if he remains in isolation in the industry, he's thrown out because he's not a team worker. So exactly opposite. So there are so many such lacunas we know, but I think as somebody has rightly mentioned that there should be an action plan now. Dr. Isaac very well mentioned that a lot of such debates are happening every day that needs to improve. So many people want to come forward, but finally one has to have an action plan and start doing. And there should be a lot of support from the policy makers in that, because coincidentally we are all from private institutions. We know that there are a lot of issues from the policies concerned. There are a lot of, I would not say favorism, but there is a lot of skewed distribution about several things for the government versus private. So unless otherwise it is breaking down, it's not going to happen, because now there are majority of the private institutions are governing the country and providing the education. So there has to be some, at least, if not favorism on this side, but it should be some parity, equal parity.
Thank you, Ketan sir.
Which is to be addressed. Yeah. And if you address them, I'm sure we will stop the brain drain, because finally our students want the best quality education.
100%, sir. Thank you, Ketan sir, for this wonderful points that you have raised regarding the things that we have to done under our education system. So coming to the Professor Prabhat sir, right now, yes, Parvinder sir also raised regarding the infrastructure, regarding the ranking in the international ranking have to be improved. So what is the major hurdles that we are facing right now is that our mindset that we are not able to do that our research is not up to the mark. So what is the major hurdle that we cannot up to that particular level that other universities and other foreign universities are doing right now in the proper academic structure that we have also, and we have the biggest academic structure in all over the world. So Prabhat sir, your inputs, what is the major hurdle that we are not making up to the international ranking so that all the international people can come to the India and have a successful study in India right now?
Okay, thank you. First of all, the term we have been using, brain drain, I would say it's a brain gain. I mean, these are the people. Today, I have started a project on nuclear fusion, first time in the country outside one national lab, that is Institute of Plasma Research, in my university. It was not started by me. It was suggested by Silicon Valley investors with Indian background. Tomorrow, I'm talking to General Atomics CEO, global CEO, who is also an Indian guy. We're discussing how they are going to cooperate. General Atomics is the one which is a major name in nuclear fusion. In fact, that's the only nuclear fusion reactor running in the US is run by them. It's an important point there also that lab that is run by a private entity is funded completely by government. The whole lab is run by a private entity, funded by government. All of the labs have been closed. Those kind of machines, nuclear fusion reactor machines, tokamaks as we call it, only General Atomics is running. That's a private entity. So the faith on private institution is much higher in the US. The brain, that drain we call it, actually is a brain gain because we are getting it back. It was investment. It was investment. Coming back to your point, actually, since I was part of many policy making in the government of India level in Delhi for 5 years, one thing I will mention that you cannot segregate economy from rest of the thing. Today, I cannot say that I'm going to pay less salary or have poor quality of life and people will come from abroad flocking to us. That's not possible. So if you look at Singapore, for example, maybe 30, 40 years back, they were in a bad situation. Slowly they've grown to the status where people from US or anywhere else will be willing to come and work there. So the economic level of the country is equally important. You cannot have rankings and other things in isolation. You have to make, it is a catch-22 situation. They have to work together. You cannot expect that overnight things will change. Third, I would like to mention that let's not focus too much on the international ranking. Let's improve our things. Let's not worry about others judging us. Let's judge ourselves. Let's improve. Let's compete with ourselves. I must improve myself rather than looking at China is doing some ranking or US doing some ranking. Forget about it. China at one stage stopped participating in any athletic competition. But I think it was a long period of time. They said that now we are going to focus on us, and suddenly they come out and they start topping. They start to lead. So focus on our quality. Don't worry about others being judging us. That's an important point. I would also like to mention that there are certain cultural and social aspects that are equally important. Today, I discourage my child in my home from working with hand. We tell them that working with hand is not good for you. Go and study. And as was being mentioned, that focus on exam, getting marks and all those things. So we actually bias children again working with hand. You go to US, the same child learns to work with hand from earliest stage because everybody in the family is working, cleaning dishes, cleaning toilets is not something alien to them. Personally, as Dr. Ketan Kotecha mentioned, Nalanda, I grew up in a Gurukul style school where I was living in Nalanda Ashram. My ashram name was Nalanda Ashram. From 8 of 10, I was living there. I used to clean toilets, clean dishes, clean floors every single day. Does it mean that I've become a bad person? We need to ingrain this value in the student's mind that working with them. This is affecting our innovation. This is affecting our manufacturing because our students, a mechanical engineer does not want to go into floor shop. He or she wants to go into do MBA or go into IT sector or sit in air conditioned room. Now, if a mechanical does not go to a workshop, who will go? So this is the work ethics that has to be there. Second thing, what we have done, we have created this whole, what should I say? Certain institutions are great in the country, IIT is great. I'm an IIT student. Does it mean that nobody outside IIT can do anything? So what we have done is that we have created this unnecessary competition where you are saying that if you cannot compete in IIT, your life here is gone. No, you will see coaching institutes putting big hoardings. What is this doing? It is from starting from 9th or even earlier. 9, 10, 11, 12, the students are doing nothing. The very creative part of life is all spoiled. The students are simply preparing for exams. This is killing away the innovative spirit of our children. As Dr. Kotecha mentioned, I was in Berkeley 40 years back to do my PhD. I was a teaching assistant to earn my income to survive. I used to be part of a course which was taught by a Nobel Prize winner. How many students were sitting in that? 1,000 students sitting together, 1,000 students. Dr. Isaac, I hope you don't have a heart attack. From AICT, you had to actually make sure that there are this number of students and so on. Now we had 1,000 number of students sitting in one classroom together, and a Nobel Prize winner was teaching that. So all of those 1,000 students were exposed to same quality of education. We as a teaching institution used to help them. So it's a team teaching practice. Today, I've been told that Berkeley, there's a 2,000 size classroom. So do we really worry about the process of trying to define the size of the classroom, the size, number of students, number of teachers? Let it be left to the education system to develop as per the requirement. As Dr. Kotecha mentioned, we are trying to define how should the exam done, everything should be done. We never bother. Let the teachers be responsible. I'm doing the same in my university. It is teachers' responsibility that you need to teach and evaluate the students. But what happens? Our regulatory bodies come. Today I'm expecting a UGC committee with AIC member coming in. They'll ask this question that how can you do this? But I have to stick to my stand that I'm following something which is good for the education. And this is not something new. It's been practiced for decades. If today we look at the education system, US education system tops. This was not the case 200 years back. The same Harvard that we are talking of today was Harvard when it was formed. If you look at 200 years of history of that, it was like a book quotes which wrote this. They were Murgi chores. The students were like Murgi chores. That's the kind of comment that is being made in this. The Europe education was considered much better. No. People used to go from USA to Europe. This is till 1900, 2030 ki baat kar raha hu. It is not something even talking 1700. So over the last 100 years, US changed itself. So today, of course, we consider the best. Why don't we learn from that? Why do you try to restrict everything? So as Dr. Kotecha mentioned, that the education system has to be made free of this regular thing. Let outcome be important. What I've seen, for example, Orleans College started in US, close to MIT, near Boston area, around 2001. 50% of learning is based on projects. The day you join today, suppose there are 5 courses or 6 courses, 3 courses equivalent is project. You are told right day one, you have known nothing. You said that please make a artificial butterfly. You know nothing. You go learn make the butterfly. That is how you learn. Learn by doing it rather than trying to say that I'll teach you theory and do this. Let us a top-down approach. I want to make a butterfly. Let me learn how to make a butterfly. Learn whatever is necessary to do that. Today, Finland, which is considered number one in world education, they've done away with all the subjects because nothing is specific to a discipline. It's all interdisciplinary. They work on problems. So we need to break these things. I'm happy to inform you a couple of things because I've tried to, I don't only talk, I practice this. I face problems with institutions like AICT, UGC, but I stick to my stand. So I created a curriculum, BTech Computer Science in 2019, which was a completely different kind of curriculum, a multi-track system, which I created because I knew that in the country needed a change. I didn't want to do something which was not useful to a student. Having been head of India's technology think tank, where we prepared technology vision 25, Dr. Ajay was told that we are seeing the changes that were happening. So the curriculum that I created of computer science engineering, I'm happy to inform you that AICT has become flexible enough that they actually sent me an appreciation letter. This is a very good program. It will help the students. They formed a committee where I was a member to revamp the computer science engineering curriculum in the country. And net effect is that in next year, the approval handbook, actually 5 to 6 new courses started, which is influenced by what we have done here. In fact, 2021, January 2021, Pune University, out of all the universities, has suddenly also changed, which is influenced by what we have done. When I had come to Pune 3 years ago, people could not talk beyond Pune University. I'm sure Dr. Ketan Kotecha also might have seen this because what was there, the gold standard was Pune University. Today, by doing very simple changes that were required, I'm not in a government university, I'm not a powerful person, a prime minister that I can change. I've just done the right system into the whole country, it has spread. Similarly, we started with design thinking, fabrication lab. Today, I'm chairing a committee, just now it's going on, in fact, I have to join, where AICT is setting up 100 idea labs across the country. So what we need to do is to take bold steps in our education system. Private institutions have the responsibility to do this because we can take quick decisions, we can move faster actually to do this. So we have that responsibility. The government institutions are slow to respond. I'd also like to mention the research point that was mentioned. I've been part of national labs, government teaching. I've been part of government body. I was heading the technology think tank. It's a government body. But universities, I've been private universities because I can move faster. This is my second round. I was 11 years professor at Dhirubhai Ambani Institute of ICT in Gandhinagar. Dr. Ketan Kotecha was our neighbor there. We actually removed departments, no departments at all. You are free. I am from physics background, but I developed computer courses, wireless sensor network courses, which became popular worldwide. So I had the freedom to do what I like to do. That's a change we need to bring. And the same thing I've done here in terms of university research actually. Same thing I did here, interdisciplinary research. We became quickly known in the caliber of Berkeley, Berkeley, Princeton. Our projects got added to that list. People in Europe are studying this. So we should be able to do that. Today, I'm happy to inform you that we have started that nuclear fusion program supported by US investors. I'm being joined by Google co-founder's brother, I'm forgetting his name. Carl, his brother is the co-founder, if one of you can remember. So Carl is a brother of one of them, and he is trying to support us. And probably what we are trying to do is going to solve nuclear power problem of the country, actually, whole country. We're not talking of a small project. This is all happening in a private university. When I was in Gandhinagar also, same thing. Chandrayaan-2 mission, the critical part of the project, where when the lander lands on the moon and the rover comes out, the ISRO requested to take up all the experiments that had to be done on the rover was to be developed by me. So today it is possible to actually make the change. We have to take that bold step. Management, of course, has to support this. I'm thankful to my management for believing in. They were not certain, but I could convince them, and I had the freedom to do these things. I will not take more time, but a lot of such things I'm doing, even to the extent of I'm making sure that the faculty members of the same discipline don't sit together.
Thanks, sir. Thank Prabhat, sir, for this covering all the aspect regarding this internalization, and a small change can bring a miracle. Coming to the ISEC, sir, in your opening remarks, you have given that many discussion has been put forward, but it's time to take action. So can NEP bring that change for the Indian university to make the international standards? Isaac sir, over to you, sir.
Yeah, that is a good question. Whether the NEP can make a revolutionary change in the education so that our standing in the international market will improve or not. See, I certainly believe I am an optimist. So things should happen. But the only problem which I find in all these cases is that we should have changes happening in every sphere of our thing. Like Prabhat Ranjan was telling that there are a lot of changes which has happened in the regulatory bodies, which is allowing uh, things to happen in the way the institution wanted it. But I go a further step. You were also mentioning that the brain drain should be stopped. How do we do all these things? The question. The question here is that I will tell you, I was focusing earlier also on the research. And the NEP also focuses on research with the National Research Foundation, right? But how do you effectively do it? I'll tell you, the two successful projects the government of India is one is a space mission, which is Indian Space Research Organization. The second, which I consider is the best, is the uh, DRDO, right? These are the two successful projects. Which, I mean, there will be some other things also, but I consider these two are two successful projects of the government. The advantage here is that we attack a problem, a major problem. We have several such problems in India which have to be tackled. Today, when you talk about uh, learning to happen through internet, what is the status of condition which is available of providing internet to the villages, even in cities? How do we solve this problem? Can we take up this as a challenging problem by one or two or three universities together as a major project and solve it? Like Google, SpaceX are trying to solve the problem. They attack one problem. It's a major million project, maybe automated cars. I mean, don't get into the automated cars. We have got to solve the problem of reaching out to the millions of people in India, the internet service at an affordable and rates, maybe much cheaper to what it is, and its quality will have to be. We talk about 4G, 5G, but in reality, is it happening? So how do we reach out to the people so that we educate the whole population of India through a revolutionary technological change? So can 3 or 4 universities together get a good funding, as Prabhat was telling that, something which he is doing, where it involves a lot of money. So the budget of ISRO or the DRDO, the missile project, or it's huge. So similar to that, if we attack this problem, the way we found solution to the corona virus by developing vaccines, we should tackle these problems on a national level with a national project, research project. If such projects are funded by the NRF, then naturally the universities will get in more into research, which will attract good brainees from the other countries who have already gone there. So the brain drain will not be there. They'll come. They'll work in such projects. So this is something which we have got to start, that a national project, because Prabhat Ranjan will be able to tell you further on this, because he has been in the Department of Science and Technology and this boards. So if we can go ahead, some 2, 3, 4 universities come together, they do it. So similar projects which we can identify, so that the whole scenario of academic will change, so that the true NEP, standards will naturally improve. How can we get into that kind of a space? That is the implementation which we have to have it. I think I'll make it short. I think it's clear to all of you.
Yes, sir. So Isaac sir, one more thing, sir, like more universities, government is opening more and more universities, more and more institutions. So is the right way to open more university or such kind of huge network already we have? So we have to more empower these institutions rather than opening more universities. What do you think, Isaac sir? Is that
Yeah.
good to
That
do?
again, my question is that we have, see, if you take the universities, that today we have only about 1,000 universities. This can go to 10,000 easily. But that can happen only by merging the existing 40,000 plus colleges in this country. We may not require many more new institutions or many more new infrastructure. The existing infrastructure by way of this 40,000 colleges in this country could be grouped or networked or whatever way you wanted it to have one unit and make them into 10,000 universities. So ultimately, India will have 10,000 universities. That's all.
So
All
Isaac
the
sir, like
institutions will be with them.
merging of banks is going on, so such kind of
Yeah,
innovation can be done like merging of.
it is merger and acquisition of institutions should happen in such a way that we will have 10,000 universities. And these 10,000 universities, and no affiliating system will be in place. Affiliating system will go. That is what the NEP says. So if we go to that level, we will have 10,000 universities catering to all kind of education in that university. It's not small. It will have minimum 5,000 to 10,000 students minimum. That is the level which we are going to operate. But see, today our GER is 25. We can easily make it into 50 with the existing infrastructure, provided we go in for a blended form of learning. We allow,
Perfect,
say,
sir.
50. I'm talking about 50-50. Maybe people will say that 30% should be on the online mode and the remaining 70% on the brick and mortar system. Whatever it is, this universities will have to get into a different, altogether different ballgame of having research to happen, for which requires funding from the government through the National Research Foundation. Without that, we can only talk. That is the first thing to happen in terms of this national education policy to happen. So how do we win? I suggested one way of funding wherein we have nationally coordinated projects, which is the need, which we have to identify as the need of the hour.
Perfect, Isaac sir. And this is the most important point that you've raised right now. And we have to, this is the excellent time because right now we are on the new stage of implementing NEP and right now much more changes can be implemented. So Parminder sir, continuing to the Isaac sir only, I need on remarks of the same regarding the NEP implementation and it will help us to improve our digital infrastructure right now working on the digital era and we have much more standards to achieve for the going to the internationalization education. So Parminder sir, your remarks regarding the same, sir.
No, I do agree with Professor Isaac when he rightly says that a number of universities can be, let's say, minimum 10,000, because we have to see the huge population of our country. When Professor Ranjan was talking on the Berkeley, I had been to Boston in Harvard. In a very small town, we find 6 or 7 universities which are globally well placed. So Harvard is there, MIT is there, Boston University is there, and similarly you go to the Sydney, you find number of universities in one city. So there is no rider that how many universities can be there in one city. The only thing is the quality of the education and the branding of the education and the world level ranking. So I do agree with Professor Ranjan. Let's not talk about the worry about the world ranking, as China did not participate, but the best of the best universities they are in the China at the moment. If we see the first 10 global universities, we find a number of universities in the China, and still they are taking lead in the education. And with this NEP, there is a big hope from the government of India and from the educator, administrator, and the education planners that there will be a big change. Not only GER is to be changed, but the digital technology has taken a seat. They have taken a driving seat. Particularly, the COVID-19 has altogether changed the global scenario of the education. Rightly said by sir, now it is a brain gain, and that's why the Prime Minister has raised a slogan, PM Scholar Return to India. And Gyan is also there. So in the Gyan, if I see 1800 scholars of 56 countries, they have offered courses in 17, 18, 18, 19, and this figure is rising very quickly. The only thing is what is required at the moment, we need to cut down the hurdles, the administrative hurdles. Some application oriented courses are to be there. Assessment stimulation is to be increased. Credit transfer is required, sir. So that's my also personal concern. There should be global credit transfer. As we talk about the academic transfer bank, academic credit bank, we must think of the world level transfer credit. So that there is a multi-track available to a global student. So maybe some part is covered here, some part is covered in other, other country. So that is where the internationalization of education can play a big role. Simply not getting the degree from the abroad or getting it training abroad. We know that with the brain drain, we have got the Nobel laureates, Indian origin, but getting the Nobel Prize from the USA or from other European country. So brought up and they grown and brought up in India. So we should be feeling proud of them. So something is to be done, and as early as possible. We should not be living behind. We are already in the race. We are in the position to deliver to the world market. So this is the right time, I think. And then Isaac sir has when they said the clustering. So I really appreciate his idea. So of course this cluster part has been introduced in the NEP also. That's the cluster of colleges. So 3,000 students and the less than that, they can have one good cluster. So similarly, we can think about the universities also. That if there are good universities and one university can deliver one good program, super specialized program, so second university should not hesitate to participate with them. Universities of the South, University of the East, University of the West, and University of the Northern, we are very different from each other on the curriculum, on the quality, as well as on the infrastructure. So we can shake hand with the university to university so that the best practices can be adopted to raise the quality of education in our country. So that will be my personal concern. Let's talk about the internationalization of the education. Let's talk about the international education as well as the national shake-up of the good things. Best practice of DY Patil, best practice of the other universities, private universities, public universities. We must come forward so that our GRE can go high. We can have the world ranking. We can have the global ranking. Best of the best infrastructure should be promoted. So thank you very much, Abhishek.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Parvinder sir. So here we are making the concluding remark. Yes, Prabhat sir.
I just wanted to add to Dr. Isaac's comments, actually, the whole team project cutting across universities. Actually, there is a scheme of DST called National Mission on Interdisciplinary Cyber Physical System, which TIFAC was given responsibility to prepare the detailed project reports. I handled that. We exactly implemented this. We had put actually 25 grand challenges. And we said that institutions can come together and say that this is a problem I will take up and this is the cost. And there have been multiple teams coming together. But finally when it's been implemented, it's all been diluted. And only the focus has been how to spend the money, because the government system looks at how quickly the money is being spent. Have you spent 90% money, have you 99% money? The merit teacher is spending money, not in the objective setting. So, what we started with, it's been completely diluted, and I was surprised to see that happening. But this is the problem that happens, that you come up with a thought process like what you did, you try to implement it, but then finally the system itself dilutes it away completely, and that's the major problem.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, Ranjan sir. So as we are already over the time, So we need the concluding remark from the each panelist, maximum 1 or 2 minutes. So my question to all panelists, right now we are talking about the internationalization of education. So Ketan sir, Prabhat sir, Isaac sir and the Parvinder sir, right now in NAP we are talking about the language. We are talking about the implementation of the mother language in our curriculum and further to the studies up to the certain level, all in the mother language. Will it impact the internationalization of education as India is the most English speaking country? How will implement impact in the future if all people will come only on the mother tongue? Second, in 2019 we are doing physical, 2020 we are doing online, in 2021 we are coming to a hybrid. So what is the future that you are seeing, that are we going to be hybrid or we should follow only to online and the learnings that has been taken from the COVID can be implemented in the physical infrastructure as well? As Ketan sir, your closing remarks on this particular tool regarding language and regarding the hybrid.
Quickly giving to answer, if the students can understand better critically in their own language, I don't see any problem, because now the technologies are there where you speak in English or speak in your native language, maybe Gujarati or Marathi, and opponent will understand in English real time and vice versa. So the technology will help if there are language issues. So if we agree that the students can learn extremely critically their mother tongue language, then should not be an issue. I don't see any barrier because of that. Because I'm a professor of AI, so I know that AI can solve this problem as well. Second, obviously there will be in hybrid mode. It's not going to be completely online, because even the students and teachers have realized that there is no substitute of an physical teaching learning, because it's not only teaching learning, it's an overall growth. There has to be a campus, there has to be a friend, there has to be a physical infrastructure, physical interaction. Otherwise, there are a lot of things which are missing. And at the same time, I think there are a lot of advantages of online education, which is getting the resources all across, reducing the travel time, and so many. So I'm sure that it's definitely going to get hybrid mode with continue. So that's an important lesson and important, I think, advantage the Corona has given. Some of the things which were not been possible, teachers were reluctant. Now automatically it has been done because of Corona. So
Thanks. Thanks, Ketan sir. Prabhat sir, your closing remarks in 1 minute.
Yeah, actually, in concluding remarks, you raised very important issues. But anyway, I'll be very short. So as Dr. Ketan mentioned, actually, language is not an issue really. If your quality of education is good, today you want to go to Germany, if you want to learn, you learn that German. You want to go to France, you learn French. You go to Japan, you learn things. You go to Russia, you learn Russian. Do we only have this country only speak English? So why this whole thing about that we should learn only in particular thing? Let the child learn in the language of their choice. That is important. The learning should be in the language, especially in the early stage. This is very, very important. This is well-established fact, and that is what we have talked about in Technology Vision 2035. This is what it thinks. So let's not worry about the language part. Let's improve our quality. People will come irrespective of this. The second thing, I also wanted to mention, for example, when I launched the computer science engineering program, immediately from Uzbekistan, we had a request that we want to have a training program. Government is going to fund, Uzbekistan government is going to fund that. 2 years they will study there, 2 years in our campus, just because of the quality of curriculum. But then what I found, I cannot do it because I'm not a government organization, so I have to wait for 5 years or 6 years before I can have an international collaboration of this kind. Of course, NEP has tried to improve upon this, but these policies try to say that if a private institute is there, it is cheating somehow. The first thing you start by saying that there is something wrong with this. So let's not worry about that. Let things be in the merit. And what we must understand is that this point that you're mentioning about the number of universities, and Dr. Isaac responded very well. This whole barrier that has been created, in fact, he knows much better than I do, because we used to have physical isolation in the same campus among the different things. I have engineering, I have management, I have something else. All that, of course, now is being told to be removed. But those infrastructure have been built like that. Everyone has to have own library. Now, when I was in Berkeley, there was an 8th floor library. I had to spend my weekends there. And it does not matter which department you are, you used to go there. Of course, there are smaller things. So these barriers are being broken. I hope that the NEP gets fully implemented, that'll be good for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Isaac, sir, your closing remarks regarding the language and hybrid learning.
I think we are taking up unnecessary issues to the limelight. That is my reaction to it. First, I would say that technology will find a solution to it. That's where research is going on. And if you want to learn it in my mother tongue, you will have that facility to do it by technological advancements. But so India do not have a common language. It has large number. So it's going to be a difficult situation. It's not like Germany or Japan or something where you have only one language. But they are also shifting to change to English. But we should not take up it as an issue at all. We should find out a technology solution so that I can listen to the talk given by somebody in English in Malayalam. So my problem is solved. So I can do everything in my language. Otherwise, the problem is the literature available is only in English. How do you get to that? So this is something which probably you will have to find a technology solution, and we should continue with what we are doing. It maybe if you want the internationalization to happen, it's always better that we follow the current policy of having English as the language or the medium of instruction in the institution. But we should have technological solutions. That's what we should have technological solutions to provide the needs of the individuals, whoever wants to do it in their respective languages. The technology should find a solution to that. That I think Prabhat Ranjan has been doing a lot of ideas in that respect, which if finds the end of the tunnel, if you find the light, then that will be the real solution to that. So that this need not be an issue at all to anybody. So if the whole issue will be that we have got to improve the quality of education, that is the teaching learning process and the research. If we improve that, the internationalization will happen. All these things can be on the side by side.
Just one point when you mentioned the project. Actually, what we envisaged, real-time translation among Indian language. That was a technology that we have seen. So on touch of a button, a child can get the content in the choice of their language. We had also visualized as part of the interdisciplinary cyber physical system, a multilingual holographic guru who is in your classroom talking in your language, but there's one teacher somewhere else who is teaching everything. So each child has access to the same guru in the language of their choice.
Thanks, Prabhat sir. Pravinder sir, your closing remarks. After that, we will wrap up this session.
So one thing is, now we are clear about the after the thoughtful discussion, panel discussion from Professor Prabhat, Professor Isaac, and Dr. Ketan. I think more or less we are towards the internationalization of education with some mindset change and making our higher education, particularly higher education, more student-centric, more student-friendly, and globally acceptable. So let us not think that the internationalization only the student from India going abroad. It should be a two-way process, but we should have sufficient stuff to serve them. So with our own heritage, with our own Sanskrit, with all our values and ethics and some studies, like Professor Ranjan was earlier saying, the yoga and many other sciences, astronomical sciences, where we had already been pioneered. So let us try to bring those values, moral values, ethics values, some religious studies. So we are in a country which is vastly secular, and I think 100 and 1,000 new courses can be there which can attract the foreign student, so that we can raise we can touch this bar which has been set to 2024 in the government paper. It should be at least 5 lakh foreign students who should be coming to the India. So we should be readily accepting them, and we should be providing them not only the course which is already with them, the course which can be telling the Vedic studies, astronomical studies, or something which can teach the culture and heritage preservance. So we are already number one all over the world for this thing. So that should be the main spirit of all the university educators, administrator, as well as the government. So government barricade need to be a little bit minimized so that there can be exchange of program, there can be exchange of culture, exchange of student, faculty, so that the best of the best things should be adopted by all of us. Thank you very much,
Thank
Abhishek.
you, sir. Thank you, Parvinder, sir. And this is the best point that you have raised, that we have to exchange of the culture, and India is very much high on this the culture side. So by this, we are wrapping this session. We don't want to wrap this session. We have more discuss. So actually, audience are putting some more questions. So I request all the audience, please send us a question. We will send your question to all the panelists, and you can also follow our all the speakers on their social handle as well. They are very much active on the social handle there. If you can drop your particular query, they can revert you. Otherwise, you can drop your query at education@digitallearning.in. We will send your questions to the particular speaker. If they revert, we will get back to you. Thank you, Dr. Ketan sir. Thank you for giving your precious time. Thank you, Pirwas sir. Thank you, Isaac sir, and thank you, Parvinder sir, for giving
Thank you,
our
sir.
precious time. And I request Deepak to share the speaker certificate. It is a small token of appreciation to Professor Dr. Parvinder Singh, Vice Chancellor, Riyadh Dara University, Mohali. And speaker certificate is presented to Professor Dr. Kuncheria P. Isaac, Director General, Zimi Group of Institutions, Bangalore. Thank you, Isaac sir, for the wonderful session. Dr. Ketan Kocha, Director, Symbiosis Institute of Technology. Thank you, Ketan sir, for giving your precious time. Professor Prabhat Ranjan, Vice Chancellor, D.Y. Patil International University. Thank you, Prabhat sir. Thank you for this wonderful discussion and deliberations over the internet. So by this, we are wrapping the day one of World Education Summit. Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank my co
Bye.